I like to call this one, Has the World Gone Mad? Now, if you ask people who have bought into what is, in my view, claptrap, that gender identity is not related to biological sex, this can't even make sense to them, surely. Today I read that newborn babies were having their gender identity rather than their biological sex registered at birth. Yep. So instead of the words biological sex, which makes perfect sense because it's binary, you either are registered male or female, which is determined by your anatomy, midwives filling in the forms at King's College London and Guy's and St Thomas Hospital were given the option to select gender identity instead on the new IT system. So if gender identity, as these ideologues continue to profess, is something that you as an individual determine and can be different to your biological sex, how the hell can a newborn baby who frankly doesn't even know what is happening, or a medic who's only just delivered the baby, and the parents who won't know what the child supposedly identifies as, A, because she can't speak, and B, because the child doesn't even know about the world yet, how can someone determine the gender identity of that newborn if the whole premise of gender identity is that it is unrelated to biological sex? It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And something else here, in my view, is happening. This slow creep to modify our language subtly, because that's how those behind this nonsense have behaved thus far. Things like including those who identify as women to the definition of woman in the dictionary, justified by the way the word is used rather than the actual word, what the word means, making the changes with no real consensus. But the effect enables men to claim that they are women according to the dictionary definition. But changing the definition of biological sex at birth to include the option to select gender identity is scarily chilling. It's an infiltration of the influence of transgender activism. Now, this should have no place in a setting where biology and fact truly matters, as these forms are part of a patient's health records for life. Now, a midwife blew the whistle on this practice. The changes were all part of a new £450 million system called EPIC, which was being rolled out to London teaching hospitals and NHS trusts nationwide over the next 15 years. Maya Forstarter from the campaign group Sex Matters said, London hospitals registering babies by gender identity is absurd and chilling, and a clear indicator of the extent to which trans activism has taken over the NHS. Now, a spokesperson for the hospitals thanked the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday, who uncovered the story, for what they called the unfortunate language. And they said, this error is being rectified as quickly as possible, and we apologise for any confusion caused. We are changing it to read sex for the newborn hospital discharge summary. Can you imagine if this had gone unchecked? All this under the backdrop of the removal of the word mother, woman, breastfeeding, I mean, the list goes on. Look, I get it. Some people believe that gender identity is separate to biological sex. I don't. But they are welcome to that belief. But I draw the line at a baby being given a gender identity at birth. All right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. Right, so welcome. Good to see you both.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, lovely. Christine, I'm going to start with you. Eventually, somebody spotted this. This is why it was changed. But had this midwife not seen it, and people like the Mail on Sunday not got hold of it and spoken about it, this would have gone under the radar.
It could have gone under the radar for goodness knows how long, and a whole raft of babies, I don't know how many babies are born every day, could have had that assigned on their birth certificate, and once it's there, it's there. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing. You wonder how this can happen in a sensible world, but the world's gone mad. It really has. What worries me is that my feeling is that most normal, ordinary, day-to-day people like us think that that's mad. They dare not speak out, because look what happens when somebody with the clout of J.K. Rowling speaks out. She gets cancelled, she gets absolutely demonised and death threats. So normal people think, I'm going to keep my head down. But I think the majority is on our side. This is absolute nonsense, and it's got to stop. What sort of money has that cost to change it to gender and change it back again when we've got record waiting lists? I mean, I'm horrified by that.
But the point is, these people who believe in the notion of gender identity, I don't. It's male or female, it's biological, it's quite simple. But if people want to go that complicated way...
Later on?
Well, but they're saying that you can decide on your gender, and that's how the belief is. So if you can decide on your gender, and that's what gender identity is, how can a baby do that?
Well, it can't, can it?
Thank God the hospital have corrected it.
Yeah.
It was a midwife who spotted it,
Well, thank God for the midwife, and thank God for the hospital, and thank God for the Mail on Sunday, because it is insidious.
And thank God for Nana.
And thank God for Nana Akua, who also writes for the sister paper, the Daily Mail. It's disconcerting, it's troublesome, and it's worrying, isn't it? That word replacement and the normalisation. And what always gets me, if you have any question about climate science, about the veracity of it, people will say, well, don't you trust the scientists? You trust your doctor when he prescribes you something. Now, that's part of science, but you don't trust the climate scientists.
Well, you'll be called a climate denier if you start names.
So you can't have it both ways. Either you trust science, so if you trust science, then you can't decide your own gender.
No.
It's one or the other. It's binary, just like gender.
But they try and detach the word gender from sex. Yeah. So then their argument is that gender is not associated to biology. But if that's the case, it means that you can determine it, but a baby cannot determine it.
Of course it can't.
So the fact that they're using that language suggests that they're trying to a slow creep of that language.
It's mission creep.
It's mission creep.
It's word replacement.
And it's normalising nonsense. That's what it's doing.
Yeah, but also, you see, we know that a baby can't decide when they've just been born.
But it's not true, though. So the fact that we're discussing it, saying a baby can't decide, but that's why I specifically said that if you buy into it, then a baby can't decide.
Yeah.
But it's not real.
No, but what's worrying is that it's infiltrated the NHS to such an extent. Now, unless it's the person who's actually signed it all off, who's replaced the word sex with gender identity, then we need to determine how many people were involved in if you like, the chain of command.
Yes.
That thought that was a good idea. And what else has been replaced? And what other normalisation?
Are they cooking up, too, in the background?
Well, there's mother, there's breastfeeding became chest feeding. They tried to get rid of the word mother. They tried to get rid of...
People with wombs and stuff.
People with wombs, people who menstruate, so getting rid of the fact that it's women. So removing language slowly. Yeah. I mean, the dictionary definition of woman now includes men who identify as women. It didn't include that before.
That's the dictionary definition.
So they've added that in now as well. So if you're a man, you can now say, if you identify as a woman, that you are a woman. A man who identifies as a woman, in my view, is a trans woman.
Of course.
It's
so
not
now
a
they
woman,
can say a dictionary definition includes...
Yeah, and when I pointed this out, everyone goes, oh, no, it's nothing. And I thought, no, this is mission creep.
Excuse me, it is mission creep. As I say, it's normalising nonsense, and it's a gross insult to women. We're not cis women, for goodness sake. We're women. Anybody who is different to a woman, who wants to be a woman, they're the ones who have to put the adjective or the whatever. Trans women, you're right. Yeah. I refuse to call myself a cis, honestly.
I'm not a cis woman anyway, don't call me cis.
It is so ridiculous that you begin to think it can't be true, but it's in the newspaper, so it must be.
But that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people might listen to us and think, oh, you're just being silly, it's the culture wars and everything. Oh, but the implications for it are vast, because you have suddenly accepted the notion that gender identity exists and is separate from biological sex, and now you are using that language interchangeably, which then starts to make it mean the same thing.
But it's the consequences of pushing back. You lose your job, you get cancelled. Yeah. Only people, I've always said this, the pushback starts when there are commercial interests. For example, Netflix. There was a lot of pressure on the Netflix boss to drop a certain... I'll tell you what it was. It was a comedy show with the comedian...
Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of pushback, trans activists. And the pushback stopped because of all of a sudden Netflix realised that there was a lot of money at stake. And so you can be as nice as you want to trans activists, but as soon as shareholders start to lose dough, then reality kicks in.
Well, it was Dylan Mulvaney
as well. They broadcast it.
Dylan Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney as well.
Presumably...
Of course, Budweiser, that's right.
Yeah, Anheuser-Busch, the owning company that owns it.
Presumably, you now have to ask a baby before they've had their first feed which one. Is it 72 different pronouns they can choose?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Don't even get me started on
that.
No,
sorry.